journalist, I've got my own magazine, and I'm also a radio host, so I have a show on Rinse FM every Sunday. So I wanted to talk to you today about the music industry. Is there anyone here that wants to work in music?
Charles.
What do you want to do?
I'm a rapper.
You want to be a rapper? Is there anyone that doesn't want to be a musician in this class?
I'm a musician.
What do you want? Oh, you want to be a musician? What do you want to do?
Engineering.
Engineering. See, that's interesting because everyone wants to be a rapper, and I always say that engineering is the kind of, I don't know, it's the smart route to go down. But today I'm going to tell you about music journalism, which is the route that I chose. So my main job is interviewing rappers, which is not really a job title, and I kind of feel like a bit of a cheat when I say that. But essentially, I interview rappers, I write about them, and I also play their own music on my show. I have a blog as well, and I have a magazine which is called Viper. So this is like a magazine I started myself about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago. And it comes out every 2 years, but it's basically my baby, and this is what I work really hard on. So that's like my day job. But once a week I do a radio show, and then every day I blog. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit about my career so far. Does anyone know who French Montana is?
Oh, yeah.
Does anyone know who Kendrick Lamar is?
Yeah.
What about A$AP Rocky?
Yeah.
Joey Badass?
No.
No? Well, I've interviewed all four of those guys, and I've also interviewed people like Nas and Mary J. Blige, and kind of legends in, I don't know, maybe if you're slightly older you might know them, but Talib Kweli, Wu-Tang, Pete Rock. Yeah, basically people that I love to interview him, that's one of my favourites. But like, basically I kind of wandered into this industry not knowing that it existed. And I kind of wanted to tell you about how I got into it because there was no one. I went to school in Hackney, I went to school in Stoke Newington, so you may actually know the school I went to.
What's that?
Did you go there?
No.
Oh no. Oh nice.
What's
Yeah.
that?
Stoke Newington.
Oh, sorry.
So that's the school I went to, and at no point did anyone ever say to me, you can be a music journalist. No one ever told me that I could interview my favourite musicians, which was kind of crazy to me. I went to school with people like Labyrinth, Adam Deacon, even the drummer, Jay McNasty, who's Labyrinth's brother, I don't know. But so I went to a really interesting music school. I was like definitely encouraged to do music, but it just wasn't my thing to create it. So I ended up going with the thing that I was good at, which was writing. So I ended up writing for a couple of magazines. I've had cover stories with Clash magazine, I've written for Dazed and Confused, ID magazine, even Vice, Noisy. So it was kind of something that I guess I wanted into, but at the same time I was quite lucky. I worked for SBTV for 3 years. They gave me an opportunity to interview my favourite rappers because no one was going to do it basically. It was like Georgia, who was a very good friend of mine, but she was the main presenter. She didn't really have the hip-hop knowledge that I did, so I kind of stepped in and got to interview all of my favourite artists when I was like 23, which to me was kind of crazy. But yeah, that was basically where I started out. One day, Rinse discovered my blog, Rinse FM. I don't know if, does anyone know Rinse FM?
Yeah.
Okay, Rinse FM is like an institution in the UK. Dizzy Rascal kind of got his break on Rinse FM. If you know any grime MCs, if you know Chase and Status, any drum and bass and grime and garage and jungle MCs, that's basically where they came through. And if it wasn't for Rinse, most rappers that kind of exist in the UK, even people like Stormzy, if you're aware of the new guys coming through, they wouldn't have the break that they do if it wasn't for Rinse. So one day I got a phone call saying, do you want to work for Rinse, which was crazy to me because I'm not a DJ, I've got no DJing experience. All I know is the music I like, and to be given an opportunity to basically go out there, put 2 hours together of a music show and basically say whatever I want on the radio. I can interview whoever I want. It's like a crazy opportunity for me. But that's basically what happens. But it's not all good. I've got to say there are lots of pros and cons to what I do. I work probably 12 hours a day. I don't really have weekends off. I do my radio show on Sunday nights, so I have to work on Sundays. So it's a very, very, I'd say, challenging industry to get into, but on top of that, it's a challenging industry to stay in. You're not necessarily going to get into this and stay here, and I think that's especially the case for presenters, which is why I wanted to have not just a presenter role, but also I wanted to have the knowledge behind it. I wanted to have a magazine that can kind of support me, and basically a brand that I can kind of, you know, push forward, the same way that SBTV did when I worked for them. So that's basically what I do, and I wanted to ask you guys if there's any questions so far. Yeah?
What's the most famous rapper you've ever heard?
Oh, it's a hard one. I consider Nas to be one of the most famous rappers ever. He's a legend. He's got like 10 studio albums. I've interviewed Nas twice as well. Yeah.
What do you think is the best way to get a break for you?
Well, I would say that there's not really an exact way to get a break in this industry. That's why I'd say it's like, it is, I mean, you hear people say a lot, it's all about who you know. That's very true, but that doesn't mean that you have to know someone right to the top. It might be, in my case, I knew Georgia from SBTV. So I came out of university and she was like, we need someone to run our blog, do you want to do it? I started out blogging for SBTV, and nowadays a lot of people, I run my own blog, and a lot of people I know that want to get into the music industry, they don't want to blog. They don't want to do anything like that. They think that you walk in and go straight to the interview with like, I don't know, 50 cent. It really doesn't happen like that. And you'll intern for years. So I'd say the best thing to do would be to intern for a company that's like an emerging company, like a startup, like Jamal did. Basically, Jamal Edwards, who started SBTV, when I got to work for him, I got to go in with like basically 5, 10 other people my age. And that meant that there was less competition. So I interviewed Mary J. Blige when I was 24, and I still find that crazy because most people have to wait till they're 40 or something to interview someone that legendary. But I was quite lucky in the sense that I went to a company that had like, I mean, great, amazing connections and amazing ability to get into those places. But at the same time, it was like kind of a startup, and they trusted me to do things that a big company wouldn't have. So, like, for example, it's like if you want to work in fashion, don't go to work for Vogue because you're going to be making tea. You go to the cool magazine that's just started out, and you go to them and they'll give you a job and trust you in a way that a lot of companies wouldn't. Or maybe shouldn't, to be honest with you. Maybe Jamal was a bit naive, but at the same time, I always presented for him and I always gave him something that he was proud of, which meant that he eventually trusted me. And he would even come to me and say, is this rapper good? Should I interview him? And it kind of got to the point where it's like, you know, I had like enough musical insight. And most importantly, you've got to have a good ear. If you don't have a good ear, you're never going to work in music. But you could maybe work for something that's slightly more corporate. But if you're going to be, you know, like, I've kind of earned this name as a tastemaker, which it sounds a bit big-headed to say that, but people kind of trust me to break artists early on. And like someone, I don't know if anyone's heard of Danny Brown. Has anyone heard of Danny Brown?
Yeah.
No? Danny Brown's an artist from Detroit, and I interviewed him I'd say 4.5 years ago. Danny Brown had like 1,000 followers, and now he's got 100,000 followers. So when I reached out to Danny Brown, he basically was kind of hoping someone would interview him. So when I said to him, can I interview you for my uni magazine, I managed to interview him basically 4 years before anyone else did. And that meant that when he got more famous, my article was what they were reading. So everyone got their information about him from me, and that kind of boosted my name. Yeah. I feel like I talked loads. It's there.
It's fine.
Yeah.
What's the favourite hip hop album?
It's probably got to be either Illmatic or The Infamous by Mobb Deep. And I've also interviewed Mobb Deep, so they're probably some of the most famous. I've even interviewed Funkmaster Flex, which is a bit random.
Have you?
Yeah.
I saw him live.
Really?
Yeah.
He's a nice guy as well.
These are legends.
Any other questions?
So, just so I understand, like you didn't have a vision necessarily of this being, or it just happened.
I was a bit clueless. Like, weirdly enough, I studied fashion. I went to London College of Fashion and I did a fashion journalism degree, which was another kind of, I'd say, smart, kind of sly thing I did. I basically went to school and studied fashion, which is quite an unintelligent course. You know, I didn't have an exam when I graduated, so my journalism degree was like teaching me journalism, but it was like targeted to what I wanted to talk about. And that meant that, I mean, if you do journalism in City, you have to do an exam, you have to write basically newspaper level stories, and you've got to do news journalism. Whereas I kind of was writing about like my favourite skirts and things like that. And then when I graduated, I decided that the fashion world is based on not only who you know, but how much money you have and how many designer bags you have and things like that. And that's not really me. So I kind of decided to go down the route that was more, I'd say, more natural to me. And I felt it's cool if you know rappers, but at the same time that doesn't define you. Whereas if you work in fashion, you have to know the designers, and it's all about going to cool parties and stuff.